Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. Today I have a very special guest. It's my good friend and sales and communication coach, Mr. Ryan Tuckwood. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me, mate. How are you?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. Mate, firstly, thank you for coming on the podcast. I know you're a busy man and your diary is probably as busy as mine. So to get this lined up, we've had to move it around a few times, but
in a juggle. I've just realized that, by the way, just as a quick glance, how polarizing our backgrounds are. I'm like dark and dingy and you're like vibrant and colorful. Well, I think it works well.
Does clashes in a weirdly wonderful way, doesn't it?
In a weird kind of way. Yeah, I like it.
So the people that are listening to the podcast that know Ryan and have seen your name pop up, they'll be thinking, why has Neil brought a sales and communication coach onto his podcast, which is all about real estate? And the reason that I want to do this today is because not only is Ryan being integral in the growth of our business and helping us articulate the value that we bring to our clients, but we also learn a lot around a thing called disc profiling, and Ryan will take us through what that is soon. But I want the people that are listening to this to be able to understand how disc profiling works and how they can use disc profiling to negotiate on real estate and potentially communicate a little bit better with the person that's selling, whether that's a real estate agent or direct with a vendor, so that they can get ahead of potentially anybody else that they're negotiating with. Sound good?
Easily done. Easily
good.
Yeah,
Firstly, who is Ryan Tuckwood?
Still trying to figure it out.
For the people that don't know.
Still 41 years old, still trying to figure it out. The overview, I guess, or the short bio would be engineer by trade. So I was an engineer for 8 years in the UK, moved here at 27 years old after going through my quarter life crisis. So gave up a very, very comfortable life with my girlfriend at the time. We had an investment property, and I decided that there had to be more out there. Didn't know what it was, and I moved here in 2010. Moved to Sydney originally. Then Sydney got quite cold, so I decided to travel the East Coast and ended up on the Gold Coast, which is where I am right now. And I fell into the world of sales, kicking and screaming. So I didn't want to be a salesperson. I had all the preconceived, I would say misconceptions, but a lot of them are not misconceptions. A lot of them were validated, but ideas around what salespeople were like, that they were just manipulative, money hungry, commission driven, and would do anything to make a sale. And unfortunately, a lot of people that I met in the industry were like that. And I really didn't enjoy it. And then that culminated with me being the worst person out of 21 people for 3 months in my cold calling role. And my job was to hit 300 dials a day and find out if a random stranger had $15,000 to $25,000 liquid cash in their bank. And if they did, I would then present that lead through to the sales team, the closers, the proper sales guys.
Yeah.
I was the worst one. Ended up with no money in my bank, and I got to a bit of a crisis point where I had a Hail Mary conversation, I guess, with my boss at the time, Jack, and he just called me and said, "Mate, I'm not letting you leave just yet. I'm not letting you quit because you haven't truly tried to understand the art and craft of sales and negotiation." And I guess the reality is back then I didn't believe that it was a skill. I'd always done very well, or not very well. I'd done okay academically, and I'd always been successful in different roles. And I was just embarrassed that I couldn't make this work. So I would rather have quitted than tried. So I didn't want to believe that it was a skill. He set me a challenge for 60 days to obsess over this skill, and I did. And most people know by now that what happened after that was I went from 21st to 1st in 5 weeks, and that changed my life. Not just because of the money that I subsequently made, but because I realized the power of words and the power of communication. That one conversation with Jack changed the whole trajectory of my life. And since 2014, when we created this business, it's been about, you said it a moment ago, how do you articulate your value better? How can you take somebody that's got a great product, a great business, just like you guys have, and help you articulate it to the market in a way that is compelling, but also honest and truthful? And that's really what the business has been doing for 10 years. 10 years in October, it will be our birthday.
You're on Shark Tank as well, weren't you?
We did. We went on to start Shark Tank in 2018. Again, not something that I wanted to do.
It's a big change, though, from being an engineer to doing what you're doing now. That's not a career sort of progression that you normally see, is it?
It's definitely not. I mean, we're going to talk about disc profiling today, so I won't unravel too much just yet. But I'm a C personality type, which you'll know more about shortly. Which means I'm very methodical, very process driven, very organized, very risk averse. So to stand on a stage, put myself out on socials, let alone to go into the Shark Tank and pitch to 5 of the most successful entrepreneurs Australia's ever produced. That was a crazy idea in my eyes, but Jack is not a C personality type, and Jack decided that we were going on, and he applied, and we got on, and we became the first company in the history of Australian Shark Tank to secure and keep 3 investors. They're still with us today as well.
Incredible, mate. Incredible. What a journey, hey? Looking back.
Journey's the word for
it. But looking back, though, I mean, there's also the story where you fell asleep on the Lilo, or what do they call them over here? The Sun Lounger.
They're pool floaty.
Pool floaty.
Yeah, Lilo.
Pool floaty.
There's loads of moments like that. That was my, what I call my crisis point, where I'm 3 months into this job. I've got no money, and I literally have nowhere to stay. So I'm staying at a friend's place. I'm sleeping on their bathroom floor on a pool floaty, or a Lilo for the Brits. And then it was about 2:00 in the morning, and it just goes pop on me, and I sink to the floor, and I'm laying on these tiles, just thinking, what's the point? And I realize now it's such a metaphor for life, that we have so many of these what's the point moments. And most people, when we get to those sliding doors moments, we decide to stay behind the door, and we decide to quit, which is what I actually did. So again, fortunately for me, I had the right people around me, or one person in Jack that maybe saw something in me that I didn't see in me. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm still doing what I'm doing, which is amazing.
I've got a saying, which I normally say at the end of the podcast, but I'm going to bring it up now. And it's, every master was once a disaster, and every winner was once a beginner. And there's never a truer point, because, like you said, there, sales and communication and negotiation is a learned skill.
Yes.
And obviously with your company, Swish Sales Coaching, you can teach people the art and craft of communicating directly with people to deliver that value. And like I said earlier, you've been an integral part of the growth of our business. We've we've probably tripled in size since we started working together, which is insane. Amazing when you think about it. So thank you. And one of the big things that I learned, and one of the big things when I took my sales team through to the Swish Bootcamp, the big thing that stood out was disc profiling. So what is disc profiling?
I'll take it back for a second, because I think it needs a bit of context. So, well, one of the reasons we created this business in 2014 was that I realized I can't be the only introvert out there that is in an industry where they have to speak to humans, and maybe they're getting anxiety, they're nervous, they're apprehensive about asking for the business, and ultimately they're failing. And this works in every industry. We've coached every single industry in 32 countries across 6 continents. So we know that this crosses everything. So one of the reasons we created was not just sales, but communication and confidence. Now I've got 2 boys, Maverick's 5 and Fox is 3, and I'm teaching Maverick now communication skills, interpersonal communication skills, for when he does his show and tell at school. So when he's he's presenting his toy car, and I'm getting him to open his palm so they can see the palm of his hands, and he's saying "Good morning, Prep G," and really projecting his voice and getting eye contact. Like 5 years old, I never got any of this training. So that's one of the reasons that we created this. But as that kind of evolved, what I realized was I was constantly studying selling or sales. And then in 2017, I went to see Tony Robbins, Big Tony. And he said something that really stuck with me. And he said that people love to buy things. We get that dopamine hit when we buy, but we hate to be sold to. So we do like consuming, but we just don't want to feel that we've been sold to. And I remember sitting there in the audience, right at the back in the cheap seats. I remember sitting there thinking, so people love to buy, cool, we're a sales training company, but they hate to be sold to. So what I should have created was a how to help people buy company. And what it did, it just shifted something for me. It made me look at everything through the lens of the consumer, not the lens of the salesperson. And there's a huge distinction between the two. And it sent me down a few rabbit holes of behavioral science, emotional intelligence, NLP, and then ultimately DISC profiling, of which I then became accredited in. So DISC, emotional intelligence and motivational drivers. DISC was actually created in 1928 by a guy called William Moulton Marsden. He's the guy that created the polygraph machine or the lie detector test. Yeah. And interestingly enough, he's also the guy that created Wonder Woman for DC Comics. And what he surmised in the book that he wrote in 1928 was a book called Emotions of Normal People, which you couldn't write that book now because his studies basically looked at people that were, in his words, normal. And that meant they didn't have a diagnosed mental health disorder. So he would call them normal. And he studied these people. And he said, if you were normal, you had 4 different personas, D, I, S, and C, DISC. And that is dominant, influencer, steady, and conscientious or compliant. Little side note, he realized that when he created Wonder Woman, she was based on his personal life. He had a wife and he had a mistress. And his wife had 2 personas and his mistress had the other. And he put them together and he created the ultimate woman, Wonder Woman. So Wonder Woman has all 4 personas and she has a lasso of truth, which is a bit of a nod towards the lie detector test. So DISC is basically a profiling tool that's been around for getting on for 100 years. It was, or just shy, it was the actual assessment was created in 1941 by a guy called Walter Clark. So he took the DISC findings from William Moulton Marsden and turned it into a very sophisticated assessment. It's still used today. It's all been validated by Harvard University. And in a nutshell, what it enables us to do, which I can show people today, is how to read anybody in any situation in about 30 seconds, which is a very powerful tool because that means you can then adapt, adjust, and respond to the person in front of you.
Yes. And it's like, I like the way you say it. It's if you're speaking English to a French person, they probably won't understand it. But if you can learn how to speak French, then you can communicate with that person clearly.
Yeah. And I think if you take that a step further, if you put it into a negotiation world, like you could be the best negotiator in the world in French, like the best ever French salesperson out of Paris. But if you try to sell to me in French, it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter how good the words are. If you're not speaking my buying language, then I can't consume. And I think the high level principle that we teach, the big problem that seems to happen a lot, and there's been studies into this to prove it, is that we sell how we like to buy. Because we're told from a young age that we should treat people how we like to be treated, which is ridiculous. There's no way I'd be treating Neil how Ryan wants to be treated. That's selfish. I should be treating you how you want to be treated. Now, most people are not trained to know how they like to be treated. They know what feels right and what doesn't, but you don't know why it feels right. You're like, yeah, I like him, but I don't know why. Now, I could watch that interaction and go, I'll tell you exactly why you like him. He said this in this tone at this time. He asked this question, etc., etc.
Which is super powerful, right? When we're negotiating on real estate, and right now the Perth market and just about every market in Australia is red hot at the minute, right? Multiple offers going in on properties, 20 or 30% above asking price. But if you can give yourself that little edge over some of these people, you might not have to pay that if you can just communicate a little bit better with them.
Well, I think there's 2 parts to it. There's the communication and the general connection. So if you look at when you've got a saturated market, or there's a lot of demand for something, and you're trying to beat somebody else to the finish line. Maybe the product's the same. Maybe the company that backs you or them is the same. Maybe the money that you're offering is the same, or whatever. If all things are even, the only thing that is going to be different is your connection to that person. So, and that's what people don't seem to focus on. They focus on discounting, undercutting, throwing other things in there, left, right, and center, as opposed to actually, how can I create a better connection to that human? And that's really what DISC is about enhancing that human connection. So we can do it, and anybody can do this. It's not something that only certain personas can do. Anybody can learn this.
Yeah. And I think when you start breaking this down, and we'll talk about industries that this is recognized in as well. And we might try and throw in some actual people that might be a D or an I or an S or a C.
Yeah.
And that might people understand how to use this so we can, like you say, connect and communicate on a high level.
Yeah, it's the easiest way. And if anybody's watching this right now, or listening to this right now, if they grab a pen and paper and just draw like a cross on a piece of paper and create 4 quadrants. So then you've got top left quadrant. Hang on, I've got to do this as we're looking at it. Top left quadrant, that'd be there, would it? D, I, S, and C. So you're going to go round from top left is D, top right is I, bottom right is S, and bottom left is C. So that's our disc. That's our 4 quadrants. And as a reminder, D is dominant, I is influencer, steady, S is steady, and C is conscientious / compliant. And all we need to do is consider 2 questions when we meet somebody, really. And this is very, very surface level, but it will still give you a great guide instinctively. And as I go through this, you'll be able to think of people that you know personally, professionally, emotionally, and start to put them in a particular quadrant. So I'd recommend doing it for themselves first if you listen to this right now. So in the top left quadrant, how we identify them is by asking, well, how we identify all of them is by asking this simple question. Is somebody fast or slow in the way that they communicate? Fast or slow? So if I said to you right now, Neil, do you think day to day, when you conduct yourselves personally, professionally, however you want, do you think you're more fast and direct or a bit more slow and reserved? What do you reckon?
Definitely faster.
You're fast and direct. Okay, so where we've got that X and Y axis or the cross at the top of the vertical cross, you're going to write down fast and direct. At the bottom, you're going to write down slow and reserved. And you're going to circle the top one where you said fast and direct. So that's the first question. Are they fast or are they slow? The second question I'm asking somebody, well, I'm asking myself internally. I'm not actually asking them this question, by the way, is are they more people orientated or are they task orientated? So on the right-hand side of the horizontal line, I'm going to write down the word people. And on the left-hand side, I'm going to write task. Neil, people or task?
I am definitely task, depending on what time of the day it is. And Ryan, my disc has definitely changed. I definitely used to be more people focused, and I still love people. But now I've got kids and I've only got a certain amount of time in the day. I'm definitely more direct because I need to get stuff done in the lesser time frame that I've got available right now.
And that's an interesting pickup, right? Because your disc profile will not actually change unless you go through what they call a near-death experience or a traumatic life event. So because 65% of our default persona is embedded into us before the age of 7. So we're pretty much done by the time we get out of what we call theta brain. Mm-hmm. So that comes from school, kindy, parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, all those people that are around us in those first 7 years of our life. So I always say, if you've got kids under 7 like I have, this is maximum brainwashing time. So they're going to be watching. They'll be watching the European Championships this weekend with me. Massive England fans and Leicester City fans, even though they were born in Australia. So what you will have done now then, if you were fast and direct, you've circled fast and direct at the top, and then you will also circle task. So what that means is you've now sectioned off one of the quadrants. So the quadrant for you would be top left, which is D, dominant. You've done your disc profile. Does that ring anywhere true?
Does, absolutely.
Okay, so then I go, so I've met you for the first time. And then when you meet me, you're quite direct. You're like, hey, mate, how are you? So what industry are you in? Yeah, how long have you been doing that for? And there's a natural sort of cadence that is quite pacey to what you do. And the first questions you asked me were about business. They weren't about being married or about, do I have kids or you didn't ask me what I enjoy about the job. You asked me, how big's my team? You asked me where my office is located. You asked me task or logistical type questions. So I'm just listening out to that in the first 30 seconds. And I'm asking myself, okay, he's fast and direct. He's task orientated. I'm probably going to put him in the dominant quadrant. What that now means is I can adapt, adjust, and respond to you. And we know that dominant people are predominantly results orientated, task focused. They're there to get a job done. It doesn't mean they don't like people, but they are disproportionately going to want to get the job done as opposed to finding out what everybody did on a weekend on a Monday morning. So It's quite easy to spot. So if you're listening to this right now and you just played along with that exercise, hopefully what you've done is circle either fast or slow or task or people, and that would section off a quadrant. And that is the quadrant that you now sit personally. That would be your default position. So I don't know if people are watching this goes on YouTube.
It does, yeah. So we might actually try and put these,
cool.
From the team actually try and put these graphics.
Yeah, okay. So if you are watching this, please forgive what I'm about to do, because I mean no offense to anybody when I do it, but this is the internal conversation I'm having when I meet somebody, whether it be in person, on Zoom, or over the phone. I'm just asking myself, are they fast, slow, task people? I'm just thinking of the sign of the cross. That's it, all the time. Please don't do that when you meet somebody for the first time. But it's just a real quick, unconscious gauge. Even our receptionist, if somebody comes in for a meeting here, when they get greeted, they might walk in and go, "Hey, good morning. I'm here for a meeting with Ryan at 10 a.m." Right, quite fast, straight to the meeting. Alternatively, they might go, "Hey, good morning. How are you?" "Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yourself?" "Yeah, I'm really good. I'm here for a meeting with Ryan at 10 a.m." They went fast, and then they went people first. They said, "How are you?" So then I might have one of my receptionists, they will email me or they'll send me a Slack message saying, "Ryan, your 10 a.m. is here." They are an I personality type.
Great.
That's gold for me.
Yeah.
Now I know I can bounce through the doors and I can adapt before I even get in there. If they said to me they're an S personality type, I'm probably going to go in there a little bit slower, a bit more composed. I'm probably not going to go in for a hug. Probably going to sit down, have a bit of a shake of hand. So having everybody in your team across this is extremely valuable. Is that a good kind of helicopter view?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we go through this, again, I'll see if the team can put the graphics in so we can put the traits and what to avoid as we go through this as well.
Yeah.
So we've got the cross drawn out. I'm doing it myself now.
Yeah.
DISC. Let's go through the different quadrants and talk about what the traits are for that people, what to avoid.
Yeah.
And also we'll talk about the industry and potentially try and throw somebody in there that we can relate to.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's start with our dominance with the Ds, because if you are a D personality type, listen to this right now, you just want me to get on with it anyway, so I might as well. So Ds are, I'll give you one phrase actually for each four, and then I'll go into how to spot them and what to avoid. So one phrase for a dominant person is that they are purely motivated by getting results. Purely motivated by getting results. So very outcome driven, sometimes to the detriment of the process, sometimes to the detriment of the relationship, right? It's all about the outcome that I need to achieve. I will say this, disproportionately across the globe, every culture, every industry, every country, disproportionately D personality types end up in leadership or management or business ownership roles.
You can see why.
Yeah, not necessarily because they deserve to be there, and this is an issue, but because they're prepared to throw their hat in the ring. So then you might have an S personality type, which I'll get to in a second, that's a bit more reserved, but they could be better qualified or better suited to the role, but they didn't even put their hand up. The powers that be that were making the decision didn't even know this person exists because they just kept quiet. Whereas the Ds, they're a bit more outspoken and they're prepared to put their hat in the ring, even though they know they don't deserve that role. So D's are there. The I personality type, so top right, they crave social recognition. So they're a lot more social and talkative, naturally a lot more outgoing. There is a misconception that these people make the best salespeople. In my experience, they don't make the best salespeople. I'll tell you who does at the end. The reason being, they also have a bit of shiny object syndrome. So they don't always have great attention to detail. So they might break records, but then they'll also hit rock bottom, and then they'll break a record, and then they'll hit rock bottom because they get bored with their own script. They get bored with their own process. So they're constantly changing things. I was never a record breaker, but I'd be like 80% all the time, and I'd just be consistent. So that served me really well. And that might give you an indication of which
I was just about to say
quadrants might be best.
Yeah.
So steadies, bottom right, they like to maintain the status quo. So they're the people that say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? That's the way it's always been done, which are very dangerous statements, to be honest, in business. That can leave you behind very quickly, especially in the age of AI that we're now in. Yeah. but they are people orientated. So if you can show them that the changes that we're making are for the benefit of the human, the person, because that's what they care about more than task, they will change. And when they change, they'll just stay. They'll just stay on par. They won't try and change anything without asking permission. So super loyal. And then the C's, which is ironically what I am, even though I masquerade as an I. So I'm a C, conscientious or compliant. Everything has to be right. There's no room for error. If I'm purchasing an investment property, and I actually ran 2017 to 2020, I owned a real estate investment company as well. So I do know the industry very, very well. Everything has to be bullet pointed. So even back then, when I first started, before I fell down this rabbit hole of disc, I'm doing in homes and I'm sitting with people talking about investing in property. And I've created these graphics that show every single step of the sales process, all the way from hello, this is the conversation we're on right now. And the last picture was a graphic that I made on Canva. The last picture was a house and a bottle of champagne. Because I needed to know all of those stages. What I didn't realize back then was not everybody needs to know all of those stages. Because again, I was selling how I like to buy. So it served me well from if I was selling to a C, but if I showed that to an I, it was overwhelming. All they wanted to see was the bottle of champagne. And this is where people go wrong, because they go, well, this is what I like. And we hear this a lot in training. Well, Ryan, if you said that to me, I wouldn't buy from you. And I'm like, I know, I wouldn't say that to you. I have 4 ways to say everything. So if you're negotiating on a property or a piece of land or whatever it may be, even if you're talking to the banks about what you can borrow, you need to speak the language of the person that you're speaking to right then. So yes, they might be a banker, they might be helping you get funds, but they could still be an S personality type that is people orientated, and you are discussing family whilst they're looking at data and typing things into a computer. I don't know. Yeah. Every single stage needs to be maximized. And it just might help you get an extra 20 grand. I don't know. It's not going to go against you.
Yeah, true. And like, it all comes back to the connection, right? All comes back to the connection.
Communication and connection. They go hand in hand. And if you take it a step further, if you're on the other side of it and you're the salesperson, that you get communication and equals connection equals commission. Most people bypass the first two to focus on the commission. So if you can disconnect from that, and even from you're investing in property, it's a business, right? You got to emotionally detach from it as much as possible anyway, where you can. It's a business decision, and if you focus on the outcome, then you're going to try and get there as quickly as possible. If you focus on the connection, the outcome will just be a natural byproduct.
Perfect. So if we are coming up against a depersonality then in a real estate transaction, be it a real estate agent, a vendor that's trying to sell off market, maybe they've done some letterbox drops and they're dealing direct with the owner. Yeah. How do we communicate with that person then? Because they're quite pushy, they're quite arrogant, they're very results driven. How do we communicate with them so that we connect on their level?
Okay, so let's just clarify. Let's put a disclaimer in there. To some people, they're pushy and arrogant.
Okay, yeah.
Not to everybody, because like you're a D personality type. I don't see you as pushy and arrogant, but some people might, right? And it actually crosses over those quadrants. So the S personality types, if that's you right now, and your name is now sitting in that bottom right quadrant, you are the guys that are in danger of seeing Neil as more arrogant, cold-hearted, and blunt than I am, because I'm on the task side the same as you, as a C personality type. So this is what happens a lot, is that we tar people with the same brush, and then we go, oh yeah, he's just arrogant, and somebody else goes, no, what are you on about? And they don't get it. It's you won't be seen that way to everybody. So there's a couple of clues that you gave in there actually. When you said that if they've done a letterbox drop, maybe they're doing it by themselves. That's an indication of character right there. Everything is an indication of character. So who would go out there and go it alone? People that, I don't need somebody to do this for me. I can sell this myself. I'm not going to pay those silly commissions, whatever it is. That's probably not going to be an S personality type. So the process of elimination, you can at least rule out one person straight away. This C personality type might go, I want to make sure I do everything by the book. I don't want to get anything wrong, so I don't want to be uncompliant. non-compliant. So then you go, okay, well, they're now gone as well. The I's will probably think about it, but never get round to it. And then you go, all right, well, that leaves the D's. So it's probably the D's that are doing the letter drops. Maybe. Right? So we have to go, let's look at the activity of this person before they got to us. And then when they get to us, I'm going to ask myself, are they fast, slow, task, or direct? So if they're only talking numbers, if they're only talking stats and data and facts, I'm probably going to put them straight away on the left-hand side. So they're either going to be a D or a C. And then I'm honestly, the only question I'm asking is, are they doing it in a fast way or a slow way? Because most people haven't been trained to know what they're doing. Like the 99% of people are not trained on communication skills. How do I know that? Because they don't teach it at school. These interpersonal communication skills are not taught. That's why we train Queensland government and teachers to do this in schools, because we want this to be part of the curriculum. So if we play the field that's out there right now, most people don't. They don't know what to do. So that means they've got so many tells and so many giveaways. And they can't hide them because they don't know they need to hide them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can't hide a blind spot that you don't even know you have.
True.
So yeah, with the D's, so watch out for their direct language. They can come across as quite abrupt. And then in return, we just match that. We be equally pacey. We are outcome focused. We're using words results. We're using the word outcome. We're talking about things being done in a very efficient manner. We're not talking about love and relationships and holding your hand every step of the way. They're the things that would actually annoy them.
Right. Okay. What industry do we see deprofiling in the most?
So D's can actually be in every industry, but the hierarchy, as I touched on, will be obvious. So they're probably going to be in a leadership / management role. Lawyers, though, do tend to fall into that category.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So lawyers, conveyancers, maybe might fall into that category. So anybody where they've got to be quite quick on their feet, they've got to be direct. There is an obvious outcome associated with their role. Like you either win or you lose. It's cut and cold, hot and cold, or whatever it is. Those types of industries. So lawyers tend to fall into that category as well.
Okay. And if we can think of a famous personality that would be a D profile, who would that be?
I'm going to throw that back at you. Who do you reckon? Who was the first person that came to your mind?
Donald Trump.
Yes, Donald Trump. Yeah, it's the most common one. And some people love him, some people hate him.
Yeah,
like he's polarizing.
I like him
because he's you, not you.
I haven't got his hair, but
have that on your promo. You are Donald Trump. But because like attracts like. So you might not like all of his messages and what he stands for and what he does. And that's not just Donald Trump, that's anybody that falls into that category. But you respect the way he conducts himself. Whereas others might go, I don't like the way he conducts himself, but I agree with his message. But I don't like how he does it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's kind of me. And as I'm saying this, and when you said you're a C that masquerades as an I don't know whether I'm an I that masquerades as a D or whether I'm a D that masquerades as an I. So confused.
I think you're an I that masquerades as a D.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because you care.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is over time, we adapt to the environment that we're in. So your business has grown exponentially since our training. So you've had to adapt more of a dominant trait. So if I look at my disc profile, so without opening up a can of worms, you have your natural persona, which might be, let's say your natural is I, right? You're fast, but you're people focused. But then you have an adaptive trait as well. And your adaptive D might have just increased dramatically in the last couple of years. So when my co-founder, Jack, the guy I spoke about earlier on, so we started this business together in 2014. He exited in 2020. When he left, I had to step up. He was a DI. So I needed to adopt those D traits to really grow this business. And then you then coincide that with me then being the face of standing on stage. I've gone from C default to DI. So I can do it, and you can be a D. You can adapt to it. It doesn't mean it's your natural. And what it does mean is that it will take quite a lot of effort for you to live there, and it can be quite draining. So I know for me, when I do anything like this, I mean, this is just one-on-one, although there'll be millions watching and listening, I imagine. But if I'm on stage in front of a few hundred people, a few thousand people, I can do it, and I've learned to live there because I can put processes in place, but it's so draining. It's almost like I have the second I get off stage and go to the green room out the back, I don't want to talk to anybody for the rest of the night. Whereas if you're a natural I personality type, you won't need that getaway. You're on set, that fuels you. It doesn't fuel me, it drains me. What fuels me is sunlight and solitude. So being by myself in the sun, that refuels me.
Yeah.
So I think knowing what you are is really important, because it allows you to figure out how you can then bring back the best version of you all of the time. And on top of that, recognize limitations. So if anybody was bottom left like me and they're a natural C, one of our limitations is decision making. We procrastinate because everything has to be correct. So we'll miss opportunities. And I used to infuriate Jack because of this, because he was a DI. Like if he'd have asked me, do you want to go on Shark Tank? I'd have never applied. I might have said, yeah, sounds good. I'll do some research. And I'll research for years and find every reason why we shouldn't. And he knew that. So he didn't ask me, he just applied. So once I realized that that was a limitation for me, I engaged a decision-making coach, because there's ways you can actually make more effective and efficient decisions. I was actually a good decision maker, but I was too slow. So I would get to the right conclusion, but by the time I've gone, yes, Neil, I'd like to move forward with those 3 investment properties, you're like, mate, that's well gone. What are you doing? And then I'm like, and secretly I'm like relieved. But it meant that I missed so many opportunities in life. So now I've got a process that I go through, where I can actually make a decision a lot quicker. And then no decision is a decision. So then I can just move on.
Yeah, good. Let's talk about the eyes. Are the eyes the biggest percentage of population that fall into this category?
I've never found any data on this.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I've tried to. I've never found data to suggest that the majority of a population is XYZ. The same as I've never been able to find out if one of them is a better salesperson. The only data I have is internally from here at Swish and with the companies that we've coached over the last 10 years. So there is one persona that is disproportionately better at sales in our experience, but I haven't found anything outside of here to back that up.
Yeah.
So with the eyes, they are I say they're quite social and chatty. So the danger there is if you're an eye buyer and you're dealing with an eye salesperson, then your sales cycle could blow out. If you just have a bit of a yarn, and if that triggers you, you're like, oh, maybe I'm back in the eye side now. So there's a danger there. So they like to be complimented. So you can actually fuel their ego quite easily. Whereas a D personality type, like, don't do that. You don't need to do that crap. I'm not interested. Whereas the eye's like, oh, really? You like my suit? Yeah, I had it made myself. And they'll join in to help praise themselves. So with those guys, definitely be looking to leverage our CRM system if you've got one, if you're from a business perspective, or if you're on the phone to one, say you're a potential property investor and you're speaking to somebody about a property. I'm making notes on them. I'm going, right, I think they're an I personality type. I got out of them that their kids' names were Cameron and Siobhan, and I'm going to remember that. So how are the kids? Was it Cameron and Siobhan? I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to say it straight away. I wouldn't even bother for a D. Doesn't actually matter. You won't upset them if you don't mention it. But with an I, if you do mention it, you create a connection.
Again, I'm just thinking about myself, which is quite selfish. But I'm thinking I do love it when people ask me about Freddie and Joe. But then at the other end, I do just love it, just getting down into business. So I think I sit quite neutral in between a D and an I, by the sound of things.
Which can be the case. So when we do the assessment that we put our clients through, it comes up with a 17-page report. Page 13 specifically is like a target and it's got the 4 quadrants. Then it's got a target with inner and outer rings. And the further out of the ring they do a dot for your natural persona, the more prominent that personality type is for you. So the closer to the middle it is, the less prominent. So you could be a DI, but they could both be quite close to the middle, which is where I am. So I'm there's 2.5% of the population globally. So the company we use have done 35 million profiles in the last 30 years. The closer you are to the middle, the more naturally adaptable you are. Or you're a psychopath, depending on which way you want to look at it. So you might say in the middle.
Interesting.
Do you want to go to edges?
I've seen you talk about this 4 or 5 times now. Every time I listen to it, I'm still blown away by the different ways that this happens or this works, and how different I feel I am personally. But then as you're talking, I'm thinking about other people within my team.
Yeah.
Because when people come to work with us, we actually send out the disc profile and we find out what disc they actually are.
Yeah.
Which again helps us communicate with them and connect with them. And sometimes it comes back. I always try and guess what that person's going to be, and it comes back and I'm like, no way, no chance. Yeah.
It's because we also have, I mentioned it earlier, we masquerade, right? So depending on the scenario. So if I'm interviewing for a job, I'm highly likely to masquerade at that point in time, because I'm trying to be something to fit the mold that I think you're looking for.
Yeah.
So we need to be trained to be able to read that and to spot the difference, which you can do. But to take it a step further, think about when you're texting somebody, when you're emailing somebody, when you're leaving a voicemail. Every single part of those messages, however you format it, is going to be speaking to a different personality type. So if I have got an inquiry or I make an inquiry on a property, and the agent comes back to me or a private vendor comes back to me and asks me a couple of questions, I'm trying to decipher this text message. Is there something in there that gives me any indication? Did they put an emoji on it? That itself is going to put me onto the IRS side. Not the IRS, the IRS. That's what it sounded like, didn't it? So even that, like, this is what people don't do. They don't consider the response. Or somebody might say, hey, Neil, good morning. Hope you're well. Thank you for your inquiry on XYZ Street. We're looking for $630,000 for it. And then you reply going, can you do it any cheaper? And they've gone, hi, Neil, thank you so much for your inquiry. Like, they've done a real people-focused intro to that text message, and you've replied with a D response. Disconnect instantly. And people are like, oh, they're rude. So they don't even reply to you. And then you go, they're rude. Instantly.
What if you put a smiley face emoji at the end of, can you do it any cheaper?
It softens it a little bit. But if I'm getting a message like that, then I'm going to be more inclined to reply saying, hey, Neil, thank you so much for getting back to me so quickly. Really appreciate you doing so. I'm sure you've had a lot of inquiries in your beautiful house. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just something. But if I sent you a message or an inquiry and I said, how much do you want for XYZ? And you said 630, and I go, perfect. Any wiggle room? Like, I'll come in and meet you there. I'm not going to go, thank you so much for the prompt response. I'm sure you've had a lot of inquiries on your beautiful home. So we need to adapt.
Match it.
It is magic. It is magic.
Yeah. What about the yeses? Steady eddies?
My favorites. You're not supposed to have favorites, but they are my favorites. A couple of reasons. Firstly, I said I'll tell you which one is disproportionately the best salesperson I've ever had. It is female S personality types. And you can put in brackets there, introverts. So it's the ones that, and I'm not saying the rest don't, but it's the ones that genuinely care. So S personality types, they're people orientated, they're slow and reserved, so they're a bit more considered when they speak. So you need to invite them to speak and offer an opinion, because they're not going to be too forthright with that. But again, if you can get them to see that we're doing something for the right reasons, for moral reasons, or for the benefit of a human, they'll just do the same thing consistently. So for me, they've always been the best salespeople. The way we spot them is that they will sit back. They are a little bit more reserved. They're not going to be in your face. They're not going to be calling you too much. They're not going to be pitching you. they will give you space to breathe, but sometimes to a fault. So if I'm training them, I need to train them how to open up and be comfortable and confident in asking for the business or making a sale. So with those guys, I'm talking about being with them every single step of the way. I'm talking about the support that they're going to get. I'm talking about the values of our business or our organization, or maybe let's do it both ways. If I'm a vendor selling to an S and I know it's an S, I'm going to be talking about the beautiful memories that we created in this house and how much I hope they create beautiful memories in that house as well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, because I'm attaching it, I'm trying to give them some sort of ownership in their world depending if what intelligence I've got. Maybe they've got kids. If I'm on the other receiving end of that and I've got an S personality type that's selling, and I know they've had this property for 22 years, maybe it's a deceased estate. I don't know. Is that a real? Do you get those?
Yeah.
So maybe it's a deceased estate and somebody, the family is selling it on behalf of their parents, but the kids grew up there and it's quite a sentimental sale. And maybe they're not bothered about getting the highest amount of money. Maybe they want it to go to somebody else that's going to appreciate the house as much as they will.
Yes.
But I could be a D buyer, but I recognize they're an S seller. So I'm going to be talking about the memories that they created over those last 22 years. And I'm really looking forward to making those memories as well. And even though it's an investment property purchase, if it is that way and it's all transparent, then we're looking forward to creating memories for every single one of our clients moving forward. But I'm talking about something that I know will hit them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I hope people are starting to understand now why this is so powerful, because it just and the small changes. Do you know, when you started talking about the S's, Ryan, I've seen your energy shift a little bit. You naturally slowed down as you started talking about the S there.
Yeah.
Well, from an I to an S.
Yeah, because I don't want to scare them. and everything is a bit more slow and methodical, because if they try to take everything on board today and implement everything, they'll freak out and implement nothing. So it's what is the one or two things that you can take from this? And it might be just that you go, we're going to talk about the memories that we're going to create. I don't know, like just one thing. Whereas for the eyes, they'll be like, I'll use everything. I'll just change everything, which is why they then go up and down.
Yeah. What I didn't do with the I personality is ask you what famous personality would you attend to an I, and then we'll do for an S as well.
Famous people. Do you know what's interesting? It's never who you think it is. So there's one really famous introvert that you would think is an I. She's one of the most famous singers in the world. Do you know who it is?
Famous singers in the world, but like in today's times, or
still today, yeah.
Famous singers in the world got to be someone like Taylor Swift, doesn't it?
Yeah, not quite Taylor. It's Beyonce.
All right, yeah.
So Beyonce is an introvert, so by nature, right? So she created this alter ego for her to live in the world of eyes. Her alter ego is called Sasha Fierce, and she needed to create this alter ego so she could literally go, right, I'm on. And she created this person that ultimately she became. But at the end of her show, she spoke about this. She just wants to be by herself. So like you could, like I do. It's like so it's called stretch behavior. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it. So I always get the introverts or the S personality types go, I'm not cut out for sales. I could never do what you do. I'm like, you 100% can. But I need to give you a reason to. Firstly, you need to have a reason for. So going back a little bit, in 2013, when I first made any decent money, I made $334,000 in a year, and that was life-changing for me back then. I was able to support my family. My dad's had cancer for many years. He's still with us, but he hasn't been able to work since 2001. So for the first time ever, I was able to impact them and send money home to mum and dad in the UK. So I've always had a really strong why and a reason to. So I have something to get uncomfortable for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we need to sit on and go, okay, well, the first step is knowing that I can. And that's really the message I'd like everybody to get from this is it doesn't matter where you start, which quadrant you're in, you can adapt to everybody and you can negotiate at a high level. You can sell at a high level. You can succeed in business or life, whatever you want to do. So to that part, first step, I can do it or it can be done. And the second part is why should I? So then figure out what your goal might be.
Yeah.
So if I then go back to Beyonce for a second. So if I was to ask most people what I personalities are, they'll point out somebody like that, but they're actually, she's not. She masquerades. So the eyes are actually quite hard to pinpoint. Because usually you go for the real extroverted people. So you need somebody that you kind of see consistently all the time and they're always on. And they're probably more in your personal life than you would see on the TV, because that's where most people masquerade.
True.
If that makes sense. I was thinking about, what's his name? I don't know why this came to mind. I was trying to think of somebody Australian. The honey badger. Do you know the honey badger?
Oh, yeah, with the Kelly, yeah.
He's got to be an eye, isn't he? He's fast and he's funny. Yeah, I reckon him.
Yeah. What about the S's? Who would be a famous S that we might connect with or recognize?
Probably going down. I was going to go down a politician route, but that means they need to care about people. Well, there's a can of worms for you. Yeah. Do you know what? I'll go Mother Teresa. Let's go high level.
Mother Teresa, right?
Very. I mean, some would say she's a great businesswoman, so she could be a secret D. But yeah, it's like very people that are philanthropic, that are charity driven. They're quite altruistic in their ways, but they're slow and methodical in the way that they go about it. So maybe somebody like that.
Interesting. And let's finish it off with the conscientious.
The best ones. We are. We're not. We're anal. We're analytical. We overthink. We overprocess. If you're buying a house, you are the ones that will miss opportunities because you'll sit on it for too long, and you'll just the opportunities or the sliding doors will close. If you ask my team, they won't say to me, "Oh, he's got great attention to detail. Oh, he's a perfectionist." They'll say, "I'm really hard to please." So the perception from the outside is different from what I think of myself, the same as all of them. So if I'm dealing with somebody like that, I want to make their life easy. I'm going to come with printouts. I'm going to come with all of my I's dotted and my T's crossed. I'm going to create checklists. I'm going to bullet point my emails and my text messages. That's really speaking their language.
Interesting. And how would what would we not say with them if we were to, what would be the wrong way to approach one?
Erratic. So if you're overly enthusiastic, that grates me. But even, what's the best way to do it in this? I'm trying to make everything relate to your industry, by the way. So hopefully it's coming across. Let's say, for instance, you're selling me a property. Let's go this way. And I'm a C personality type. The more enthusiastic you get about this property, the less I believe you. So like less is more. It's almost with a C, what I try to encourage people to do, and this is a good sales tool in general, is it's called the intentional no. Tell people what you can't do for me. Tell people what you're not good at and quickly follow it by what you're an expert at. So if I said to you, Ryan, can I just tell you why this particular what is bad about this particular area right now? Right, this particular area of the country is not going to be great for this in the next 5 years. However, what it is going to be exceptional for is schools, churches, supermarkets, shoppers. So what's more important to you? So with that, because if you give me an intentional no, a negative, it actually validates the positives. Whereas if all I hear from you, so imagine an I personality type selling to a C, and we're crossing quadrants again, and you're like, Ryan, there's been no faster growth city in Australia in the last 20 years. This is unbelievable, right? You've got to get on this opportunity. I'm just like, my trust credits are just dropping. I don't like fluff. Ironically, you've been to our events and they're getting bigger and bigger. That's not for me. That's because I know I've got a lot of I personality types in the crowd. But even the last one we did, we had fireworks, indoor fireworks. And I'm there at the end like, oh God, this is a bit cringy. But people loved it. So I'm not speaking my language, I'm speaking theirs.
Yes. So who, again, if we fall into the famous profile, who would we class as a C? Like a Warren Buffett fall into this? Would he be?
Yeah. Somebody that's data driven or analytical. So I mean, if you can talk Germany as a country, they're very organized and process driven. Even Japan. Warren Buffett, of course, because he's studying data all day long. Anybody that's in accounting or finance, like they've got to be across the numbers. Everything has to be correct. There's no room for error. So yeah, anybody like that in those types of roles, or yeah, Warren would be a great one. That'd be a party, wouldn't it? Warren, Mother Teresa, Donald Trump. Who else did we have? The Honey Badger.
Oh, Honey Badger.
Wow.
Try and get them at the next Swish boot camp, mate. That'd be good.
I don't think Mother Teresa can make it, but I'll see what I can
do. Where would someone like Tony Robbins fall on the profile? Because he's all over the place, isn't he?
Well, he's not. He's just learned how to be all over the place.
Okay.
So he and I only know this because I share the same public speaking coach as him, a guy called Harry Singer. So Tony's a big advocate of DISC. And he could have a room of 10,000 people, and every 6 minutes he's changing the personality type he's speaking to. And I've really adopted this. So even if you come to one of our events, which you have, and I'll be spoiling this for anybody that comes in the future, but when I open the event, I open with a promise. And my promise is this, guys, these next 3 days, 2 days, hour, whatever it is, they're designed to get you results, and to get you results fast. We've proved this for the last 10 years. We know this works. But we want to have some fun whilst we do it, right? We want to make sure that we build connections and relationships. What I don't want you to do is make too many changes to what you've already got in place. Just take one or two little things and go and implement them in your business. And we're going to go through it in a very sequential and process-driven fashion. Is that okay? So what I've just done is go DISC in one sentence. Tony's doing that every 6 minutes for he's been doing it for 30 plus years, 15-hour days. He's the genius.
It works.
Well, he's the highest paid speaker globally, and arguably because of that, because of the number of people he gets in the room, he's then the highest influencer in the world, because he can intervene people that are without triggering too much, with people that are maybe on they've got suicidal tendencies, and he's taking people right from the edge and intervening and changing their life through the power of intervention. Now, or power of communication. He couldn't do that if he didn't know how to speak their language. So you'll hear Tony at an event. He's talking about fun and waking up your row and go high five your stranger and making friends and connections. But then 6 minutes later, he's going, do you want to make a change or what? And he's really hammering you. And he's like taking you on all this roller coaster of emotions, because he understands how powerful this is. So you don't even have to believe me. Just look at the best influencer in the world, and what he's been able to achieve. Now, my counter to that is this, that will get you so far. That will move you. It will light a fire inside you. That gives you a motivation, sometimes externally, which is least impactful. We need to create an internal motivation and then give you the skills and techniques to be able to follow through. So even people listening to this right now, you're now aware of the DISC profiles, but you got to listen to this 5, 6, 7 times and then go and implement it for it to actually make sense. You've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
And like you just said, I'm still listening to it, still taking nuggets of gold. Yeah. But it's not going to, you're not going to listen to something once and it be done. So I think with any event where you're going to those things, don't go into it thinking it's going to change your life forever. There's things that we need to do afterwards as well.
So where would Tony sit then? If he can change so often, how do you pick somebody that's as skilled as he is?
Yeah.
How would you pick his natural sort of profile?
Yeah, I'd actually put Tony as somebody that's got stretch behavior as well. I think he's a natural I, adaptive C. So I think he's the reverse of me. And the reason I say that is he's always been a public speaker from a very young age. It's not something that came in later years. He's always been somebody that can thrust himself into the public eye. And if you look at all of his old videos, he's always been quite fast in his message. Yeah. And he's a very clever businessman. He makes a lot of money, but the message is always people orientated. But to create something so structured, so rhythmic, so polished, word for word, that he can follow for 15, 16 hours a day, 4 or 5 days in a row for 20, 30 years, you have to have a system, and you have to have the discipline to follow that system as well. And he's the best in the game. And he has... if you want a message about discipline, he has at every single event, he has a team of 4 people taking minutes. And you've got one of them is watching his positioning on stage. One is watching his body language in general. One's watching his words, and one's listening to his tone. And then they type it up. And then when he leaves, he goes for every event. Every event. Like, he's a constantly self-auditing. Like, you don't do that unless you care about the data.
Yeah. It's massive.
Or maybe he cares so much about people and the impact that he can have, that's forcing him to obsess over the data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's huge, isn't it? So much commitment.
So much commitment. And that's what I think, that's why this skill for me is totally underrated, the skill of communication. Because we go, well, I want to buy something. Well, how much is it? I'll ask him to do it cheaper. That is such a lazy approach to getting something cheaper, especially like if you're in this game, investment property, or this could change your life. This is something that can create wealth for you for a very, very long time if you get it right. But very rarely do people commit to learning how to negotiate. They just go, I'll have a look, see what's on the market. I'll drop them a message, see if they'll do it any cheaper. I don't even need you to do it. I can get an AI bot to do that for me. So yeah.
One more person I'd like to ask you what disc profile you are, and it's someone that you spent a bit of time with recently. It's Sir Richard Branson. Where do you think he sits on the disc profile?
He broke the charts as an I personality type.
Did he?
Yeah. He's a phenomenon. I mean, this is not a conversation I ever thought I'd have post spending a bit of time with him. But yeah, he's 100% people orientated. I don't care what people say. He's creating amazing businesses. But living with him basically at his house for when I say house, it's a big bloody house on a big bloody island. Staying there for 5 days and watching him live his life and the way he interacts with people, the way he interacted with me. I had one-on-one time with him. He drove me back to my villa in a buggy. The questions he's asking me about, like, not what is my business, but why did I start it? A why question is emotive. That puts me on the IRS side automatically. The first question he asked me, why did you start this business? Other questions were around what gets the best, what of your programs gets the best results for your clients? It's a client orientated question. It's a people orientated question. And then you just watch the way he acts. He's the first one dancing on the tables, first one in the ice bath, first one on the bikes. Like, he's a phenomenon. He's effortlessly inspiring.
Yeah. So you got the pleasure of spending some time on Necker Island with him just recently, didn't you?
Yeah. A ridiculous opportunity, really. It was a random one. Just an opportunity that came across my desk that I then went through 8 months of interviews for. I never thought I'd get on. I just thought I'll interview anyway. And I ended up being the only person out of 40 from Australia, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
There were future presidents of European countries on there. There was the grandson of the founder of Porsche. There were many founders that have exited now, some of them for hundreds of millions, if not billions of US dollars. There was part of Joe Biden's team, or one of the people that was on his team were on there. It's crazy. It's an opportunity that I say it now intently. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's genuinely changed my life. It really has in so many different ways. Not just because I got to meet him, but the other people that were on there, and watching how people were acting once they've made all this money. And some of them had lost purpose, and they lost direction. So I don't want to say they were depressed, but they certainly weren't overly inspired. They were there to find their purpose again. And now what can they do? Imagine you got $500 million in the bank. What do I now do with this? How can I have the actual organization that I did it through was called Forming Impact. How can I have massive impact now after sacrificing the last 25, 30 years of my life to my business? What can I now do to leave this world in a better place than where I am? And you can't be around those types of people for 5 days straight, 24/7, because you also share a room with somebody, and not look at life a little bit differently.
It's insane, mate. It's insane. Look, if anyone deserved to be on there, mate, I believe it's you. I really do.
Appreciate it.
Really do, mate. Well, Ryan, look, we are just ticking over the hour mark. We could have kept going, mate. There's so many questions. There always is. I mean, I had the pleasure of doing one-on-one sessions with you, and at the end of them hours, again, we were still chatting away. So, mate, thank you for everything you've done for me in the business.
Okay.
Is there anything that we can give the listeners to help them with understanding DISC? How can they find the DISC profile to do it if they want to find out their own profile?
So there's a few different versions. So it depends whether you want to pay for it or not. I think he's still got it. I think Tony Robbins has got a free version on his website. So if you just go to whatever his web, just tonyrobbins.com, I imagine. There's a free version on there. Alternatively, we have a more in-depth version. It's a 17-page report through a company that we partner with called TTI Success Insights. So you can message us directly, admin@swishsalescoaching.com. admin@swishsalescoaching.com, and we can do that for you, and then we can also give you the resources to know how to read it and break it down, because that's the important part. It's not just having the report, it's knowing how to read it. So yeah, they want to go on and do that. It'd be pretty cool.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time. And we're going to finish on the quote that I spoke about at the start of the podcast, because I think it's super relevant. Every master was once a disaster, and every winner was once a beginner. Thank you, mate.
There we go, mate. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Hope everybody enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you can stay up to date with all cash flow positive property updates.